Hello, I am Mike.
Hello, I am Lily. Welcome to English Podcast Flow.
Today's episode is how to stay calm under pressure. And I think it is a topic that we all kind of struggle with. Um, those moments when you have a really important presentation at work or like a big exam or even just like a conversation that you're kind of nervous about.
Absolutely. I mean, those feelings are completely natural. Like, it's our body's way of reacting to what it thinks is like a threat, even if the threat is, like public speaking.
Right. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to explore some practical and actionable strategies for staying cool, calm, and collected, when you're under pressure.
Mhm.
And it's based on some really interesting research and insights from like psychology and stress management.
It appears that one of the most fundamental techniques is also like one of the simplest, and that's paying attention to your breath. Because when we get stressed, our breathing tends to become really shallow and rapid, and that actually like makes the feeling of anxiety even worse.
It's like your body is stuck in that fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
even if the situation doesn't exactly call for you to like run away or you get into a physical altercation.
Exactly. And studies show that by like consciously slowing down and deepening our breath, we can kind of signal to our nervous system that it's okay to relax. There's a technique that is called the 444 breathing exercise that is like incredibly effective. You inhale deeply for a count four, hold your breath for 4 counts, and then exhale slowly for another 4 counts.
Yeah, I have tried that before, and it really does work. It's almost like hitting a pause button on that anxiety spiral.
Hmm.
But what if you're in a situation where you can't really excuse yourself to do like a full-on breathing exercise? Like, what if you're right in the middle of like a big presentation?
Yeah. That's a really great point, and it kind of highlights the importance of practicing these techniques regularly. Even when you are not feeling stressed that way, they become more accessible to you when you actually really need them.
Mhm.
Even just taking a few like conscious deep breaths before a challenging situation can make a big difference. It's about building that mind-body connection and becoming more aware of like your physiological responses.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like building a toolkit of
Yeah.
techniques that you can use whenever you need them.
Yeah.
Another strategy that I've heard about is the idea of focusing on what you can control. It sounds a bit philosophical, but I'm curious to hear how that actually works in practice.
Well, it appears that when we're under pressure, it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the things that are outside of our control, like the opinions of other people, unforeseen circumstances, even things like the weather. And this can lead to, feelings of helplessness and anxiety.
Oh, I totally relate to that. It's so easy to get caught up in that mental loop of what ifs and worst case scenarios. But how do we actually shift our focus to the things we can control?
One helpful strategy is to actually like literally list out those controllable elements. For example, if you're about to give a presentation, you can't control how the audience is going to react, but you can control like your preparation, your delivery, and your overall attitude. Focusing on those elements gives you like a sense of agency and empowerment.
That's a great point. It's about directing your energy towards those things that you can actually influence rather than wasting it on things that are beyond your reach. It's like that old saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can, change the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Exactly. That quote perfectly captures the essence of this strategy. And speaking of things we can control, one of the most effective ways to manage pressure is through preparation.
Oh, I am a huge believer in the power of preparation. I always feel so much more confident going into a challenging situation if I know I've done everything I can to get ready. It's like that feeling of, okay, I've got this.
Studies show that preparation is like a powerful antidote to anxiety because it reduces uncertainty. When we feel prepared, we feel more in control, and that sense of control directly translates to a greater sense of calm.
It's like that pre-flight checklist for pilots. They go through every detail meticulously. Not because they expect something to go wrong, but because it gives them that assurance that everything is in order.
That's a great analogy. And it's not just about, knowing the material or having a plan. It's also about cultivating that inner confidence. When you feel prepared, you're more likely to project that confidence outwards, which can actually influence how other people perceive you.
So it's a positive feedback loop.
Mm.
The more prepared you feel, the more confident you appear, and the more likely you are to succeed. Now, this next one is a bit more about mindset, and I'll admit I'm sometimes a little skeptical, but I'm open to hearing more positive self-talk.
It appears that the way we talk to ourselves has like a profound impact on our emotional state.
Hmm?
If we're constantly bombarding ourselves with negative thoughts, I'm going to mess this up, I'm not good enough, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's like we're our own worst critic sometimes, and that inner voice can be incredibly loud and persuasive. But how do we shift that internal dialogue to something more positive and supportive?
It takes practice, but it's about Consciously replacing those negative thoughts with positive affirmations. Instead of saying, I'm going to fail, try saying, I am capable and prepared. Instead of, I'm not good enough, try, I am worthy and deserving of success.
It sounds a bit cheesy, but I can see how it could be helpful. It's like training your brain to focus on the positive and to build that inner resilience. It's like being your own personal cheerleader.
Exactly. And, sometimes the best way to manage pressure is to simply step away from the pressure cooker for a moment.
Oh, preach.
Mhm.
I am a firm believer in the power of a well-timed break, whether it's a 5-minute walk, a quick stretch, or even just closing my eyes and taking a few deep breaths. Stepping away from the situation can make a world of difference.
It appears that taking strategic breaks is essential for maintaining focus and managing stress levels. When we're feeling overwhelmed, our minds and bodies need a chance to reset. It's like hitting the refresh button on your computer.
I love that analogy. It's so true. Sometimes we just need to clear the cache and start fresh.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Even just standing up and stretching for a few minutes or getting a drink of water can help shift our energy and refocus our attention.
Exactly. And another technique that can be really helpful in pressure situations is the practice of staying present.
Staying present. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, it appears that when we're under pressure, our minds tend to race ahead, anticipating what might happen, dwelling on what's already happened, and creating all sorts of anxieties about the future.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah.
It's like my mind is a time traveler, constantly jumping between the past and the future and never fully grounded in the present moment.
Precisely. And that kind of mental time travel can be incredibly exhausting and anxiety provoking. The practice of staying present or mindfulness is about gently bringing your attention back to the here and now.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But how do we actually do that? How do we stay present when our minds are swirling with all those worries and anxieties?
One simple technique is to focus on your senses. Notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air on your skin, the sounds around you. These sensory anchors can help ground you in the present moment and interrupt that cascade of anxious thoughts.
It sounds so simple, but I imagine it takes practice to cultivate that kind of mindful awareness. It's like training your mind to stay focused on the present rather than getting swept away by those mental distractions. Now, this next one is a bit more unconventional, and I'll admit I'm a little skeptical, but I'm always open to trying new things. The hand trick.
Ah, yes. This one might sound a bit unusual, but some research suggests that applying pressure to certain points on your hand can have a calming effect.
Wait, you're telling me that squeezing my fingers can actually help me chill out?
Hmm.
I gotta hear more about this. How does it work?
It appears that stimulating specific pressure points on the hand may send signals to the brain that promote relaxation. Some people believe it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our body's rest and digest response.
So it's like a shortcut to triggering that calm, relaxed state. I'm definitely gonna try this next time I'm feeling stressed. Do you have any specific instructions on how to do it?
There are a few different variations, but one common technique is to press your thumb against the side of your index finger just below the knuckle and hold for a few seconds.
Hmm.
You can experiment with different points on your hand to see what feels most relaxing for you.
Interesting. It's amazing how interconnected our bodies and minds are, and how these simple physical techniques can actually have a measurable impact on our emotional state. What else do we have in our arsenal of calming strategies?
Well, sometimes the best thing we can do when we're feeling overwhelmed is to reach out for support. Talk to a trusted friend, family member, or even a therapist.
I completely agree. I'm a huge believer in the power of talking it out. Sometimes just voicing your anxieties and concerns to someone who cares can make a world of difference. It's like sharing the burden, and it often helps to gain perspective and realize you're not alone in your struggles.
Absolutely. Sharing our burdens with others can help us process our emotions, gain valuable insights, and feel less isolated in our challenges. And sometimes we just need a reminder that we're loved and supported and that we have people who care about our well-being.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders rooting for us and reminding us that we can get through this. And speaking of support systems, our own bodies can be powerful allies in managing stress.
Right. You're absolutely right. Physical movement is a fantastic way to release pent-up tension, shift our physiological state, and boost our mood.
I've definitely noticed that when I'm feeling stressed, going for a run or even just taking a brisk walk can help clear my head and shift my perspective. It's like that physical exertion helps to burn off some of that excess energy and anxiety.
It appears that exercise has a remarkable ability to regulate our mood and reduce stress hormones. And it doesn't have to be anything intense. Even gentle movements like stretching yoga or Tai Chi can have a positive impact.
So it's not about pushing ourselves to the limit. It's about finding ways to move our bodies that feel good and that help us release that tension.
Mm.
And, as we wrap up this exploration of strategies for staying calm under pressure, I think it's important to remember that we're all human and we're all going to experience moments of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
It's a normal part of life.
Absolutely. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is offer ourselves a little bit of reassurance and perspective.
So it's not about avoiding pressure altogether, but rather about learning to navigate it in a way that feels empowering and manageable.
Exactly. It's about developing those inner resources and coping mechanisms that allow us to face those challenging moments with greater resilience and grace. And remember, even if things don't go perfectly, it's okay. We all make mistakes, and those mistakes are often valuable learning opportunities.
Well said. It's about embracing the imperfections and recognizing that those moments of challenge are often the ones that help us grow the most.
Building on that idea of self-compassion and, recognizing that we're all kind of works in progress, I think it's also important to talk about the power of like reframing our perspective.
Reframing our perspective? That
Yeah.
sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It appears that when we're under pressure, we often fall into this pattern of, negative thinking and catastrophizing and like focusing on all the things that could go wrong.
Oh, I am definitely guilty of that. Like,
Okay.
my mind just becomes a magnet for all those worst case scenarios.
That's a pretty common experience. But what if, like, instead of getting swept away by those negative thought patterns, we could consciously choose a different lens to view the situation through?
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
So how do we actually reframe our perspective when the pressure's on?
One powerful technique is to just ask yourself, what's the opportunity here? Instead of seeing the situation as like a threat or a burden, try to look for the potential for growth learning or positive outcomes.
It's like that saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But how do you actually apply that to like a high pressure situation? Like, let's say you're facing a really tough job interview.
Instead of thinking, I'm going to mess this up, you could reframe it as, this is a chance to showcase my skills and connect with potential colleagues. Or if you're, feeling overwhelmed by like a really challenging project at work, you could reframe it as like, this is an opportunity to stretch my abilities and develop new skills.
I love that. It's about shifting our focus from the negative to the positive and like looking for that silver lining, in those challenging clouds.
Exactly. And sometimes it's simply about adjusting our expectations. It appears that we often set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration by aiming for perfection.
Oh, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I used to put so much pressure on myself to do everything flawlessly, and it was exhausting.
It's really important to remember that, like, we're all human and we're all going to make mistakes. Instead of striving for perfection, aim for excellence.
So it's about setting realistic goals and giving ourselves permission to be imperfect.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's about, celebrating our progress rather than dwelling on our shortcomings. Remember, you're on a journey and like every step forward is a victory.
I love that. It's about embracing that growth mindset
Yeah.
and recognizing that even our mistakes can be like valuable learning experiences. Now, speaking of learning experiences, you mentioned earlier that connecting with our values can help us stay grounded in those pressure situations. Can you elaborate on that?
It appears that when we're clear about what truly matters to us, it can act as kind of like an anchor in the midst of all the chaos when we're faced with a challenging situation. Reminding ourselves of our values can help us stay true to ourselves and make decisions that like align with our core beliefs.
So it's about having that inner compass that guides us, even when the external world feels turbulent.
Exactly. For example, if one of your core values is integrity, it might help you stay calm in a situation where you're being pressured to compromise your ethics.
That's a great example. It's like having that internal moral code that keeps us grounded and helps us navigate those tricky situations with integrity. And, another powerful tool for managing pressure that I found really helpful is gratitude.
Ah, yes. Gratitude is an incredible antidote to stress. It appears that when we focus on what we're grateful for, it kind of shifts our attention away from the negative and it helps us appreciate, the good things in our lives.
It's like that saying, count your blessings, not your troubles. But how do we actually cultivate gratitude when we're feeling so overwhelmed by pressure?
One simple practice is to keep a gratitude journal each day. Take a few moments to write down 3 things you're grateful for. It could be anything from, the warmth of the sun on your skin to the support of a loved one to a delicious meal. The key is to like train your mind to focus on the positive.
I love that. It's like creating a mental treasure chest of all the good things in our lives we can draw upon when we're feeling stressed. And you know what else I found helpful in those moments is simply acknowledging the pressure.
You mean like instead of trying to push it away or pretend it's not there?
Exactly. Sometimes I find that if I just say to myself, okay, I'm feeling stressed right now, and that's okay, it actually helps to kind of diffuse the intensity of the feeling.
That's a really great point. It appears that we often make our stress worse by resisting it. When we acknowledge and accept those uncomfortable feelings, can actually help them to kind
Hacking.
of dissipate.
So like that saying, what we resist persists.
Precisely. And once we've acknowledged those feelings, we can then choose how we want to respond to them rather than reacting automatically.
So it's about taking back our power and becoming like the master of our own inner experience.
Exactly. It's about empowering ourselves to choose calm, even in the midst of all the chaos.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on another strategy for managing pressure that often comes up, setting realistic expectations.
That's an essential one. It appears that we often set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration by setting unrealistic goals or holding ourselves to impossible standards.
I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist. I used to believe that I had to do everything perfectly, and it led to a lot of unnecessary pressure and anxiety.
It's important to remember that we're all human and we all have limitations. Instead of striving for perfection, aim for progress.
So it's about being kind to ourselves and recognizing that it's okay to make mistakes.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating our wins no matter how small they may seem.
I love that. It's about shifting our focus from self-criticism to self-compassion.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that, our worth is not determined by our achievements. We are inherently valuable regardless of our accomplishments.
Well said. And, another important aspect of managing pressure is taking care of our physical health.
Absolutely. It appears that our physical and mental well-being are like inextricably linked. When we nourish our bodies, we also nourish our minds.
So it's about making sure we're getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, and staying hydrated.
Exactly. These basic self-care practices can have like a profound impact on our ability to manage stress and maintain, emotional equilibrium.
It's like providing our bodies with the fuel they need to function optimally. And speaking of fuel, what about the role of humor in managing pressure?
Ah, yes. Laughter is truly the best medicine. It appears that laughter has been shown to reduce stress hormones, boost our immune system, and improve our mood.
So it's like a natural antidote to pressure.
Precisely. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated, Simply watching a funny movie, sharing a joke with a friend, or even just smiling can make a difference.
I love that. It's about finding those moments of lightness and joy, even in the midst of challenging times.
And another powerful tool for managing pressure is connecting with nature.
Connecting with nature. We talked about this earlier in the context of taking breaks, but I'd love to hear more about like the specific benefits.
Well, it appears that being in nature has this calming effect on our nervous system. It helps reduce stress hormones, lower blood pressure, and improve our mood.
It's like our bodies and minds were designed to thrive in natural environments.
Exactly. And it's something we can access no matter where we live.
I love that. It's about finding solace and rejuvenation in the beauty of the natural world.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Mindfulness meditation.
Mindfulness meditation.
Yeah.
We've touched on mindfulness throughout this episode, but how is meditation different?
Well, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, while meditation is a more formal practice that involves setting aside dedicated time to focus our attention on a particular object, such as our breath, a mantra, or an image.
So it's like a more structured way of cultivating mindfulness.
Exactly. And it appears that a regular meditation practice can help reduce stress, improve focus, and increase emotional regulation.
So it's like training our minds to be more calm and resilient.
Precisely. And it's a skill that can be developed with practice.
I'm curious to hear more about the role of boundaries in managing pressure.
Setting healthy boundaries is essential for protecting our time and energy and our emotional space. It involves learning to say no to requests or demands that exceed our limits or compromise our well-being.
So it's about recognizing that we have the right to prioritize our own needs and to decline requests that, don't align with our values or our goals.
Exactly. It's about creating kind of a protective bubble around ourselves so that we don't get depleted by the demands of others.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of our lives and making choices that support our overall well-being.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Delegating tasks.
Delegating tasks. I think a lot of people struggle with this, including myself. We often feel like we have to do everything ourselves.
I understand. But delegating tasks can be incredibly empowering. It allows us to free up our time and energy to focus on the things that are truly important to us.
So it's about recognizing that we don't have to do it all alone.
Exactly. And it's about trusting others to help us and to support us.
I love that. It's about building a team and working together to achieve common goals.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Practicing self-care.
Self-care. This is such an important topic. Tell me more about what you mean.
Well, self-care involves engaging in activities that nourish our physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
So it's about making time for things that bring us joy and that help us recharge.
Exactly. It could be anything from taking a relaxing bath to reading a good book to spending time with loved
I
ones.
love that. It's about prioritizing our own well-being and making sure we're taking care of ourselves.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Seeking professional help.
Seeking professional help. When is it a good idea to reach out to like a therapist or a counselor?
Well, if you're struggling to manage pressure on your own, or if it's having a significant impact on your daily life, it's important to seek professional support.
So it's about recognizing that we don't have to go through this alone and that there are people who can help.
Exactly. Therapists and counselors are trained to provide support and guidance to help us develop, healthy coping mechanisms and manage stress effectively.
I love that. It's about investing in our mental health and seeking the support we need to thrive.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Practicing forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, it appears that forgiveness involves letting go of anger, resentment, and bitterness towards ourselves or others.
So it's about releasing those negative emotions that can weigh us down.
Exactly. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning or excusing, hurtful behavior, but it does mean choosing to release the pain and move forward.
I love that. It's about choosing peace over resentment.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Focusing on our strengths.
Focusing on our strengths. I think this is such an important point. Tell me more.
Well, when we're under pressure, it's easy to get caught up in our weaknesses and our shortcomings, but it's important to remember that we all have unique strengths and talents.
So it's about recognizing and celebrating our abilities.
Exactly. When we focus on our strengths, it can boost our confidence and help us feel more capable of handling challenges.
I love that. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we possess.
And you know what else can be helpful in managing pressure? Setting clear goals.
Setting clear goals. How does that help us manage pressure?
Well, it appears that having clear goals gives us a sense of direction and purpose. When we know what we're working towards, it can help us stay motivated and focused even when things get tough.
We have to prioritize our own well-being if we want to be able to navigate those challenges effectively.
Absolutely. And, another important aspect of self-care is setting boundaries. It's about recognizing that we have the right to say no to requests or demands that exceed our capacity or that don't align with our values or goals.
Boundaries are so important, and I think a lot of people struggle with setting them, especially in a culture that often glorifies busyness and overachievement.
Yeah.
But it's about recognizing that we have a finite amount of time and energy, and that's okay to prioritize our own needs and well-being.
It appears that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's actually an act of self-respect. It's about honoring our own limits and recognizing that we can't be everything to everyone. And sometimes saying no to others means saying yes to ourselves.
That's so powerful, and I think it's a message that a lot of people need to hear, especially those who tend to, put everyone else's needs before their own. And speaking of taking care of ourselves, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on seeking professional help as a strategy for managing pressure. When is it a good idea to reach out to a therapist or a counselor?
There's still a lot of stigma around seeking mental health support, but it's important to remember that therapy is a valuable resource for anyone, regardless of what challenges they're facing. If you're struggling to manage pressure on your own, if it's starting to interfere with your daily life, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed and don't know where to turn, reaching out to a therapist can be incredibly helpful.
It's like going to the doctor for a physical ailment. We wouldn't hesitate to seek medical attention if we were experiencing physical pain or discomfort, and there's no shame in doing the same for our mental and emotional health.
Exactly. Therapists are trained to help us understand, our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and to develop healthy coping mechanisms for managing stress and anxiety. They provide a safe and confidential space for us to, explore our challenges and to work towards creating a more balanced and fulfilling life.
And, as we wrap up this conversation about staying calm under pressure, I think it's important to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the power of remembering that you will be okay. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of personal growth and well-being. Until then, take care and be well.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.